Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit TRE.radio.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests. Viewpoint.
It is Tuesday, the 3rd of June. Welcome to Viewpoint Talk Radio Europe's current affairs programme, where we discuss the issues of the day with a panel of invited guests with you for the next 2 hours. Going to be looking at the situation in Ukraine after the quite spectacular drone attacks that were launched over the past couple of days, wiping out the Russian bomber fleet. Also, the speech by Sir Keir Starmer yesterday, which raised eyebrows with an increase in defence spending and saying that he's putting Britain on a war footing. London Mayor Sadiq Khan talking about decriminalising cannabis again, one that seems to rumble on and on. We might even talk about the new search for Madeleine McCann, which is making most of the TV programmes today. If you want to get involved with this morning's show, or if you've got something else you want to get your viewpoint across, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Great savings on all Nessun products at Mikolchon. Up to 24 months interest-free. No hidden fees. Proud sponsors of the international news headlines on TRE. Mikolchon for a great night's sleep.
So let's look at the front pages, several front pages, as I said before, focus on the new searches in Portugal by detectives investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann 18 years after she vanished while on a holiday. Telegraph says the operation is believed to be a final push to secure evidence needed to bring the prime suspect, Christian Bruckner, to court. The Daily Mirror says officers will scour rural land close to his former home with wells, ruins and water storage tanks among the places set to be examined. According to The Sun, ground-penetrating radar will be used to search trenches dug for works that were taking place at the time the 3-year-old went missing, but have since been filled in. The Times reports on a call from Sir Tony Blair for Britain to lead the way with AI doctors and nurses or risk being left behind on what he describes as the biggest upheaval since the Industrial Revolution. The former Prime Minister made the comments at a festival in London where he urged the government to embrace artificial intelligence in every department, warning the UK couldn't afford to be squeamish about the technology. The paper says the Technology Secretary, Peter Carl, told the same event he was willing to take risks on AI because it was a greater risk to resist change. With the headline Tory warnings over backdoor blasphemy war, the Daily Mail highlights concern expressed by Kebby Badenoch following the conviction of a protester who burned a copy of the Quran. It says the Conservative leader believes the case should go to appeal after she said she would defend freedom of belief and freedom not to believe until her dying day. When asked about the case last night, the Prime Minister's spokesperson said there were no blasphemy laws in England and there were no plans to introduce any. The Guardian claims to have learned the recent airstrikes on school buildings being used to shelter displaced Palestinians in Gaza are part of a deliberate bombing strategy by the Israelis, and more schools have been identified as targets. It says the Israeli Defense Force insists it operates on the grounds of military necessity and within international law. So those front pages this morning from the top. The Guardian, Starmer pledges to make Britain battle ready with drones and AI. Meanwhile, tax rises loom to put Britain on war footing. That's the Times. Financial Times. Defence aims, they're saying that submarines are at the heart of the defence review. The I paper, British over 18s offered taste of military life with gap year in Army, Navy and RAF. Let's just sort of not national service, but you can get a paid year in the armed forces. Daily Express, budget delay won't cut the mustard as Russia threaten, is the Daily Express saying a former army chief has attacked the PM for failing to confirm 3% defence spending. Daily Telegraph, police in major new hunt for Madeleine McCann. The Daily Mirror, 18 years after disappearance, new Maddie search. The Daily Mail, Tory warnings over backdoor blasphemy war. And again, the search for Madeleine McCann. The Sun, radar search and dig for Maddie. The Metro is in a different story, which was talking about a soldier being dead for 3 weeks in a bed at barracks. Bullied soldier dead for 3 weeks in bed at barracks. There was no evidence of self-harm or suicide. That's on the Metro. And finally, the Daily Star, again, leads with the Maddie search shock 30 German cops. Hunt for missing girl. And those are your headlines on this Tuesday, the 3rd of June.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
Yes, indeed. Joined in the studio today by Tim Stafford. Good morning to you, Timothy.
Good morning, Giles.
And in the white corner, Dr. Jerry Hagan. Yes, good morning to you, Jerry.
Good morning, Giles. How are you?
Another day in paradise. What are you going to do? So, it's the Tim and Jerry show once again. If you want to get your viewpoints across, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
So, those are the numbers on this morning's Viewpoint. The main story, I suppose, is the speech yesterday by Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. Britain said that it would radically change its approach to defence to address threats from Russia, nuclear risk and cyber attacks by investing in drones and digital warfare rather than relying on a much larger army to engage in combat. Responding to US President Donald Trump's insistence that Europe takes more responsibility for its own security, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has pledged the largest sustained increase in British defence spending since the end of the Cold War. But with limited finance, the government's plan envisages making the army more lethal, not much larger, by learning from Ukraine, where drones and technology have transformed the battlefield. It's going to be an interesting one for Keir Starmer and the Labour government, because obviously we have things like the winter fuel cuts coming in, people being told there's no more money available for this, that, and the other. Yet we seem to be where we're turning sort of ploughshares into swords, putting Britain on a war footing. Panel, do you think we should be worried? We should be nervous? And do you think we are heading to? Do you think Britain on a war footing is something that we should be more than a little concerned about? I'll start with you, Tim.
I think in a sense, we already are on a war footing. It's only that the Ukraine are at the shield at the moment, and it's not unreasonable to project into the future that one would, or a nation such as Britain, would have a requirement for greater facility and ability in its military. Things have changed. I mean, as a result of innovation by the Ukrainians, the type of rearmament required has altered. If you look at Russia as an entity in itself, with absolutely no ability to traverse the world with an aircraft carrier, because they haven't even got one. Well, there is one, but it's been in dry dock for the last 8 years. They don't have that kind of capability, but what they do have is a large number of submarines. And historically, Britain has prevailed in naval warfare, and we are an island race after all. And that, in terms of defence, I suppose, is something that has to be maintained at whatever level. But the rest of the spending, up to 3%, would seem to me to be a sort of redirection. The procurement ministry in Britain is going to have to scientifically address this with a type of armaments that would be more suitable. Obviously, if any example is to be gained from the Ukrainian experience, it's not a matter of manpower. They are outnumbered 3-1, and yet have managed to defend themselves very ably.
Julie, it's interesting that he made this speech up in the Clyde in Glasgow yesterday, because obviously that's a shipbuilding area, heavy industries traditionally, talking about 12 new nuclear submarines, which is obviously reinforcing that sort of mutually assured destruction that we had during the Cold War, and it's the, it is the armaments dividend, if you like, but can you bring those sort of heavy industries, the shipbuilding industries? Do you think it can regenerate the area?
I know they're making that point, say this will be great for jobs and British workforce, etc. Going back to the original point, I mean, what isn't the point of a military to be always on a war footing? I'm a bit bemused by that statement. We're going to go on a war footing. You mean we weren't ready before? I don't quite understand that. But the 12 more submarines, first of all, I can't remember how many they are. It's about 6 or something at the moment, but at the moment only one of them is operating at any one time. The rest are on dry docks and they being repaired and etc. And the guys who are on the operating ship are now having to do 8 months under the sea without a break, which is way beyond what they were originally meant to do. And as for the 12 new submarines, I think they'll be ready in about 2045 if they keep the schedule, by which time, unless it's a miracle of modern medicine, Vladimir Putin won't be in charge of Russia anymore. So, like, that is really long-term planning. Have you thought that through? That's going to be a long, long time before we have these submarines in operation.
But I think it's the signal of the intent, isn't it? I mean, you say, isn't the military always on a war footing? But perhaps he's preparing the sort of the population, putting out a marker saying, well, the Cold War, the Cold War reboot is underway. We better be ready for it, and therefore there may be more announcements like this coming. I mean, because of
Isn't it it's about the money, isn't it? Because if you're going to increase military spending, it has to come from somewhere else. So something else services have to be cut. Local authorities, the health services are partly untouchable. Education, etc. It's not a finite pot. You can't keep borrowing more and more money. But having said that, it's all a question of attitude. I mean, Britain spends heading for 2.5%. Baltic states, who are a lot near Russia, they spend about 5%. And Spain, which is the furthest away country in Europe, they're less than 2%, 1 point something or other. So he's preparing the electorate for change to got to happen, and so that people say, yeah, really, we have to have arms, we have to have a proper army to defend ourselves against the Russians, so the trains won't run in time or something else will happen. Pensions is another soft spot. I mean, 2.2 trillion a year in pensions are like, that's a lot of money. No, and the amount they're going to spend in military is a tiny drop in the bucket compared to that sort of spend. So something has to go somewhere.
Yes, and I think people's view of the defence spending would at 3% would be altered if, as could happen, Finland, Estonia will come under threat from a new front, a new Putin front. I mean, who knows what he's capable of. And they are prepared for it. We've been sending our training troops over there for quite some time to train them with HIMARS and so on. And because Estonia is very flat and it is a sort of tank country, and, all year round, because a 50-ton tank or plus is not great in soggy conditions. It's okay in frozen frozen ground, and it's pretty okay in summer conditions. But honestly, you'd think a tank would be fine in soggy stuff, but it's not. So anyway, they're being trained in Finland and Estonia with weapons that are either American or British, and obviously the drone manufacturer is going full pace. I think because the Germans in particular have made their position clear and that they are increasing their spending quite dramatically and in line with what NATO might expect, which is 3%. I think it's an opportunity for a form of unity or a reaffirmation of a European view of NATO, that we do actually have a decent line of European defence, which has been very much neglected. All this sort of fiasco Rhine occupation stuff that we had for many, many years, and I was out there quite a lot when people were swanning about pretending to defend something in the Cold War, that this is a completely new scenario where we have to be prepared, and that is what Starmer is addressing with his proposed 3%, up to 3% spending.
I mean, one of the things he was saying was NATO first. This was one of his key words yesterday. So it is a realignment, and one of the situations, I suppose, is that we are no longer, the UK is no longer a member of the European Union, but this is something that they can be seen to be, pushing a European agenda, a European collective together, because obviously Britain, militarily being one of the heavyweights, having 70,000 standing army of 70,000. However, it comes out very well trained, etc., recognised as one of the best, and so therefore, if the UK says, right, we are committing to this spending, it will perhaps. It will reinforce the commitment to NATO, and that means the Baltic states, etc., who may be looking askance. But also it will, because you can bet your proverbial bottom dollar that the French will want to sort of match that, because traditionally, and other nations who are perhaps being a little slow on the uptake or going, well, perhaps not. Spain, obviously, being one we've talked about this before, may say, well, we're grudgingly perhaps, but we have to get involved with the NATO projects as well. Now that the Americans seem to be pulling out of it altogether.
I don't know if they will pull out of it. I mean, Trump
being lackluster.
But I think Trump's got a point. Why should America spend so much of their budget on defending Europe when Europe aren't doing it themselves, or some European nations aren't spending the same amount as Americans are? He has a point, but he won't be there forever, and certainly not. He won't be there when the new submarines come through.
Looking at the WhatsApps, which are, of course, +34 645 99 67 95. Good morning, Richard. Defence spending is more like attack spending. As long as the UK pretends to be a major player, then it needs to pump money into it. It's pointless for Tim to compare the UK to Russia. Better to compare NATO to Russia, of which NATO is 12 times richer and can defend versus Russia with ease. And you want to beware of what comes after Putin. NATO needs to spend another $1.2 trillion for all members to get 5%. And it needs to spend $260 billion just to 3%. If you want to get your viewpoint across, +34 645 99 67 95. You can call me on 952 78 4000. You can email me at studio@tre.radio, or the Facebook page, which is Talk Radio Europe. Official. He's going to have a time, though, isn't he, Sakir Starmer? Because obviously there are those in the Labour Party who will look on this as not what the electorate want. Labour traditionally perhaps hasn't been as ready to rearm or as ready commitment to defence as the Conservatives have, for example. So it might be a tough ask for Sakir Starmer, who already has some rumblings, discontent in his party, to say, well, we need to do this.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what he's addressing when he's talking about making us war ready. It's not just the electorates within his own party, because people certainly in the left of the Labour Party will spend want more money spent in social services, care, universal credit or whatever. We want more spent on that. But obviously he's flagging the ground and said, well, just think again, guys, we've got to spend all this money on arms. There's not, what's the old phrase, there's no money tree, etc. So that's part of his message as well.
It's interesting also, he mentioned, you've got two ends of scale here, because we're talking about a massive investment in nuclear submarines, which obviously don't come cheap. And then he's also talking we've got to be ready for cyber warfare, and they mentioned drones in a week where I think it was a third of Russia's nuclear bomber fleet were wiped out because of these. I mean, they're not the drones you'd buy from, your local Chinese store. But they are, I think they're about 500 euros worth. So you've got 500 euros worth of drone wiping out a third of the strategic nuclear bomber fleet. That's, that is what you call a bit of leverage, isn't it? So,
it's also quite. Sorry.
So there are obviously many across the full range of drones. They go from 20 million with the high level, high altitude drones that the USA commonly use, very long range, down to those that the Ukrainians managed to purchase from the Australians who used wooden drones for delivering medical packages in the Australian outback, which are very difficult to detect on radar. But commonly, they use four-rotor drones of varying sizes. Some of them can carry drones themselves to either drop or kamikaze style strike usually armoured armour. And so there's huge ranges of drones, and one needs, one suspects, in each category a level of spending. And drones, yes. I mean, if you were a Russian general living in an administrative capacity in Moscow, you might be slightly concerned that a sort of drone imaginatively released by the Ukrainians might fly in through your bathroom window. I mean, where does this all go? How do we detect drones which are very, very small and so on? But I think Starmer is absolutely right in addressing it now, because the first line of any government's duty really is defence of the nation. You don't see it sort of as top line in constitutional terms, but if you look at the definition of government of a nation, that really is where it begins. And it's all very well for the Labour Party to, in general, across the Parliament, to suggest, well, yes, we do need to spend money on minorities, on all sorts of benefits that should and could apply, and left-wing policies which tend to ignore the nation and rather prefer the minority. And, but there comes a time, and Europe is doing this across the board, when we have to be aware that we need to defend ourselves.
952784000. Jerry, you know something?
I just jumping back a bit. I think what the Ukrainians did was an astounding feat of military action for the drones to 184 planes they're allegedly hit. It took a year and a half to set it all up. They smuggled trucks in, and they smuggled wooden huts into it, and then the huts were then put on trucks.
Crates,
and crates, and then fired all at once. I'd seen the day before 2 bridges came down in Russia as well. What's interesting is the Russian media are saying almost nothing about it, and people in the streets say, and it's been played as another example of Ukrainian aggression in the Russian media, and people are saying it's like very little talked about. The 2 bridges are on TV, but very little. Well, for a start, the Russian media are not allowed to show film of military airports, etc. So that's a problem. But some people are saying like it's the general's fault for leaving the planes out in the open air, etc. But I think military people all around the world will be in shock at this. Like, wow, all our planes sit out,
and also
out in the open air like that.
Some of these were in Siberia. I mean, this is like 3,000, 4,000 miles away.
Inside the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, exactly. You're not thinking that you're in any danger. I mean, audacious isn't even... I mean, can you imagine being the Air Force officer that has to go and tell Vladimir Putin,
oh, guess what?
Hi, boss, we've got a bit of news for you.
Bad news.
Yes, indeed.
Often in theatres of war have arisen little pockets of absolute... I mean, we had code breaking and so on as part of our brilliance, but because we sort of went with an intelligence-based... combating of the Third Reich. But what the Ukrainians have done in terms of innovation, high-level imagination, and tremendous sort of Mossad class intelligence to get these drones into position to do what they've done. And there's no reason to suppose that they can't do this again, and time again. Totally destabilizing this sense of security that any military installations or individual personnel might have in Moscow itself.
You think about the way this, the warfare is going, and you think, like you mentioned Mossad, but of course we had the pagers in Lebanon. The exploding pager situation. Yeah. This just shows we no longer need to put. Here comes the old saying, boots on the ground, etc. To have a military. I mean, you do need, because I think you're in danger of saying, oh well, we are going to do it all through drones, and we're going to do it all through cyber warfare, and then somebody comes thundering through, across your border. So you still need a standing arm as it was, but the ingenuity, I suppose, of the forces to actually come up with these ideas. I mean, self-opening crates and whatever. But yeah, I mean, to me, it just looks like you have these, nuclear bombers, which again you would think that they are normally would be delivered by missile rather than a bomber. Which is, if you like, classic sort of 50s, 60s Cold War technology being wiped out by the drones, yeah.
It sounds like this was all dreamed up by a kid who does video games. Like not normal military thinking to think you could get trucks in all over Russia and hit the Arctic Circle and bomb planes when on the ground without being detected. It's quite an incredible piece of lateral thinking.
Is that going to be the new thing for military? Well, yeah, can you fly? Can you fly a drone? How good are you on your video game?
Well, we're not that far from Russia ourselves, so they could return the compliment and fire drones at all the RAF and US bases in UK, couldn't they?
If they have that capability. But I think we've seen with the Russian forces, they seem to be going back to long range indiscriminate missile attacks, which I should imagine we'll see more of hitting Ukraine, which would build up and just throwing huge numbers of people at positions as always.
Yeah, I think if you look at the attrition that the Russians have employed, or the invasion cost, has been that they've lost more than 900,000 troops in invading. Defending, the Ukrainians are sort of around the 250. That is the sort of ratio one gets when defending versus trying to take territory. I left a chicken sandwich on my chopping board yesterday, right. And after I came back into the kitchen, I found tremendous numbers of ants who decided to make best use of this chicken sandwich. Well, what I did was first of all to remove the chicken sandwich and then hit them with. There's a lot of them. I hit them with a massive spray can of insect killer that I have, and destroyed them in their vast numbers. And then I started tracking where they had come from, and they'd come through actually underneath the front door in a stream of intelligence gathering.
Are we going somewhere with this thing?
Yes, we are, because
just there's nothing.
I then set up
we think alike.
I then set up an ant powder barrier, which is rather like the sort of tank barriers and ditches that one might, in old-fashioned terms, use, and they do use them in Ukraine, that to make it extremely difficult for them to get further than that. And if they do come further than that, then they will be decimated on the other side. So defending is quite easy. Attacking is a much more difficult thing.
I've got the point now.
Right, okay. Yes. Right then, I'm going to take, on that bombshell, I'm going to take a quick break and then we're back with more Viewpoints.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
Always live, always lively, joined in the studio by Tim Stafford and Dr. Jerry Hagan. If you want to get your viewpoint across, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And let's have a look at some of the WhatsApps coming in. The SALT agreement, strategic arms limitation talks, I think was that, yeah. It states that all of these types of bombers must be satellite visible. US and Russians, that's why they were above ground. So it makes sense. Yeah, indeed. And meanwhile, okay, so Richard, a few bits and pieces from him, as always, and thank you for getting involved. Why the US spends and should spend the most in NATO, for the simple reason that the US is by far the richest and biggest nation in NATO. The US accounts for 53% of the wealth and arguably accounts for most of the threats that NATO endure or fights war in. Remember the nonsense that UKIP spewed pre-Brexit? The EU has a long record of creating institutions through the back door, and the creation of an EU army will be no different. All of a sudden, the British public will be presented with a done deal, and British troops will find themselves operating under the EU flag rather than the Union flag. That was UKIP on the 4th of May, over 10 years ago, 2015. Doesn't an EU army, or certainly a NATO army that includes more Euro nations, make economic, strategic and efficient sense? Going back to a point that Tim made, left-wing policies that ignore the nation, as opposed to the right-wing ones that support the wealthy, Tim? Question mark?
Well, the wealthy, yes, supporting this, that and the other. The balance, it's ever thus that, either you choose to make the lives of the less fortunate better, which is everybody's view that is what should be happening, or on the more extreme end of the left, that was drag every wealthy person, business creator, down to the level of what they prefer.
Thus endeth the lesson. Right. Meanwhile, going to some more bits and pieces. Medvedev says Russia seeks victory, not compromise, in talks with Ukraine. Senior Russian security, because they are meeting today, Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul. Senior Russian security official Medvedev said that on Tuesday that the point of holding peace talks with Ukraine was to ensure a swift and complete Russian victory. The Istanbul talks are not for striking a compromise peace on someone else's delusional terms, but for a swift victory and the complete destruction of the neo-Nazi regime. That was the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council. He said that on Telegram, so that doesn't bode well. To the lines we go. Morning caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Hello, Felix here.
Morning, Felix.
Good morning. First of all, the situation as regards this war, which is a tragic war with great numbers of people, lives lost. If you want to understand how this war actually began, how it came into being, you should spend about €10 on Kindle and buy a book by a man called Scott Horton. That's Scott, S-C-O-T-T, and Horton, H-O-R-T-O-N. That will get it for you. And the book is called Provoked. Provoked. So you have no reason for not getting this book for a very small amount of money on Kindle. And it explains in about 700 pages, with about half of those devoted to the sources of the stories, just how this war began. And it began way back, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the so-called West, what I call the imperialist countries of America and Britain and other European countries, they said, oh goody, let's move in and break it up. At a time when Gorbachev, etc., were begging to be left alone and to go forward in peace. Second point is that this action was really an action of despair by Ukraine. If the funds were removed from Ukraine, it would be over tomorrow morning. This is totally a proxy war. Ukraine is a proxy country with its origins deep inside of the Holocaust. That's it. Its origins are deep inside the Holocaust. Okay. These people who originated this war and who took the power in 2002, were people who were Nazis, confirmed Nazis, and they took the power, and then they kicked the existing prime minister or president completely out of the country. He had to flee for his life.
Right.
Anyway, Scott Horton deals with this.
Yeah.
I haven't heard the book mentioned once on Talk Radio Europe, although it's available for interviews.
Okay, thank you.
And Hannah Murray could find out, could have an interview with him very easily.
Okay.
And Ritson could cover it at his 2-hour program anytime.
Right.
And do your research, because I never heard such a pack of lies as coming from 1, 2, 3, 4 people in all my life.
Okay, it's nice that you can
count. Pack of lies, Giles. Pack of lies. Do your research.
Do your research. Learn to count, Felix.
Do your research, my friend.
Thank you, Felix.
And buy the book and cover the book on your program here.
Okay.
Cover it here.
Thank you, Felix.
Cover the book here.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day. I'll play a quick bit of this, I think.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And should you have any programming ideas for TRE, please give me a shout on 952 78 4000, studio@tre.radio. It's the email. The Facebook page is Talk Radio Europe Official. It's your viewpoint. You can get your viewpoints across. Yes, thank you, listeners. Indeed. What have we got? So, as I was saying before, just want to catch up on the Medvedev situation, because he's saying that there's a set of Russian demands happening today. They are presenting these demands to the Ukraine, to the peace conference being held in Istanbul. These include handing over more territory, becoming a neutral country, accepting limits on the size of the Ukrainian army, and holding new parliamentary and presidential elections. At the talks, which lasted an hour, Two sides agreed on a new prisoner of war exchange. Okay, so that's at least a glimmer of light. In exchange of 12,000 dead soldiers, but not on the ceasefire that Ukraine and its allies are pressing Russia to accept. Medvedev, added, in an apparent response to Ukraine's weekend strikes on Russian strategic bomber bases, that Moscow would take revenge. Retribution is inevitable, he said. Our army is pushing forward and will continue to advance. Everything that needs to be blown up will be blown up, and those who must be eliminated will be. So that's a bit of a bold statement to go into a peace talks with, panel, wouldn't you say?
The Russian apologists who phoned in just a few moments ago possibly forgets the idea that, or the fact that almost every nation has a border which some of which were originally a sort of a geographical mountain range type or river type borders. Some of them entirely arbitrary in a line drawn across this. Look at the straight lines there are. But once having established a sovereign nation and the exact dimensions, if you like, of your own nation, which you have a right to defend, it's where your people live, which is what Ukraine did when the USSR capitulated, if you like, and regardless of pressures that some people might perceive to have been applied by the Western world, that nation became a sovereign nation, regardless of where it started, just as every other nation, including our own in Britain and with its various borders, is. So if you respect the nationhood, the sovereignty of a nation, and its right to defend itself, then the point about reading this chap's book or having him interviewed might be irrelevant. It's the history of the falling apart of the USSR is one thing. The right of a sovereign nation to defend itself is quite another.
Just want to go to some of the points coming in. Thank you, Sam. Always great to have moments like this on TRE. This in from Richard. Scott Horton's myth that NATO enlargement threatened Russia's security is the textbook Russian propaganda, not a fair concern. The fair concerns simply seek to push NATO borders back to Berlin, as Putin himself clearly said before the invasion. Let's stop pretending that we don't know this. The sad part is that weak men like Donny and Kellogg are too naive to understand that if you bow to these fair concerns of Putin, he will simply raise more fair concerns and continue with his aggression. Wake up and smell the coffee. Looking at that, Scott Horton is an American attorney known for his work in human rights law and the law of armed conflict, as well as emerging markets and international law. He graduated Texas Law School in Austin, and was a junior partner. And somebody sent me something about Horton. So he's editor and director of the Libertarian Institute and hosts the Scott Horton Show. So yes, indeed. He's also published books such as Fool's Errands, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, and also Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. 952-78-4000. I see a thread. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. The Facebook page is Talk Radio Europe Official. If you want to know what's coming up today on TRE Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain, well, following me will be Stephen Ritson, of course, with Europe Today. After that, we will have Selena's show. She'll be chatting to Barbara Demick, talking about Daughters of the Bamboo Grove, which is an interesting book about the adoption of a Chinese child. Jonathan Kidd, never mind the acting, just say the words. This is a book written by Jonathan about his father, Sam Kidd. Well-known actor, of course. You will recognise the face. Hannah on TRE in the afternoon will be with us, where she's joined by Charlotte Rodriguez, of course, all wine. And also she's chatting to a lady called Dr. Shanali Pereira, who was finding me beyond illness. Was the name of her book, exploring art, illness, and identity. That's before Howard Brereton joins us with Spain Today, and then there's the repeat of this show from 7 until 9 o'clock. That's all coming up. On TRE Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
The Remix, a recap of the best interviews of the week.
Giving all foods their proper names rather than going, that's super healthy, that's rubbish, that's junk. Those words sets people up to think of food as an emotional thing, whereas actually at the most fundamental level, it's not emotional.
In the office, try to have a cup of coffee with the person that's furthest away from you in terms of thinking, in terms of background. You can learn something remarkably about that person, but at the same time, you'll also learn something about yourself.
Tune in Saturdays and Sundays from 2 p.m.
and help the public understand that these are not caricatures. You know, these are people with real problems trying to do what I think is a really important job, and so they are brutally effective. What they do is not illegal, but it can cause a lot of harm.
The Remix on TRE.
Indeed. Pesticide on kitchen worktops after my learned friend's somewhat interesting preamble there. Pesticide on kitchen worktops. Genius, Tim. So, did you clean or are you still suffering from the effects of I should imagine, own brand ant killer?
I went in with a solution of water and bleach and gave a little rub over with and to make it sterile, as it were. Okay. And then applied the ordinary kitchen cleaner, which is not bleachy particularly, but it's kind of, like a disinfectant.
And how does the sandwich taste? Wouldn't it have been easy to just eat it out?
The wooden board gets scrubbed down with ordinary fairy liquid.
Other brands are available. Yes, exactly. Other brands are available.
Other brands are available, and sometimes they're not as good as others.
Okay.
All right.
We're doing advertising.
We're doing advertising on that. Yes, it's only because Tim's got the Nanette Newman fetish. That's why. 952 78 4000 is the phone. Ironically, apparently, Scott Horton is married to a Ukrainian. It looks like a Poundland Rory Stewart. So there's a thought for you. Looking at some of the comments coming in. If you want to get your viewpoint across, of course, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Those are indeed the numbers. Right, we're going up to the national and international news at the top of that. Then we'll be looking at more subjects here on the Viewpoint. If there's something you want to get your viewpoint across, we would love to hear from you. 952 78 4000. We will go on perhaps to looking at thoughts on the search for Madeleine McCann. Also, with the announcement that London Mayor Sadiq Khan was saying he was calling for cannabis to be decriminalised. Your thoughts on that, plus anything else crossing your radar? We go to the national international news up next, and I'll see you after that.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests. Viewpoint.
Always live. Welcome back to second half of Viewpoint with myself, Giles Brown, joined by Tim Stafford and Dr. Jerry Hagan. If you want to get your viewpoint across, so come on, anything that is crossing your radar, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Indeed, those are the numbers to get involved. Looking at some of the comments coming through, which are publishing. Morning to Mark. Morning, bro. Raining at Brooklands. Tuned into Viewpoint. Toe rags are us. Thank you very much indeed. If you wish to get involved, just looking at some of the bits and pieces that are coming up as well. There's breaking news as Dutch far-right leader Wilders has quit the coalition. The PVV party left the governing coalition in a move it's set to topple the right-wing government and will likely lead to new elections. This is could be an interesting one because the coalition partners were not willing to support him on his ideas on halting asylum immigration. This comes on the back of the results in Poland, which happened the election for president, because this was the election of nationalist Karol Nawrocki. It looks like going to strain relations with Ukraine, and it could embolden Donald Trump-inspired conservatives in Central Europe. This is what analysts and diplomats said yesterday. He won the vote on the knife edge that pitted him against Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, I probably got that wrong, who was supported by the ruling centrist coalition, dealing a major blow to the pro-European government of Prime Minister Donald Tusk. So, interesting, again, populists, it looks like there's rumbling of populism again in Europe. I mean, Holland has been, the Netherlands has long been a situation developing there, re-immigration. People, saying, and obviously Poland, it's an interesting one with Poland because obviously the Tusk, the Prime Minister, is seen as being sort of pro-Europe, and obviously the new president is calling for the return to traditional Polish values, which seems to be the rallying cry. Any thoughts on, especially in Holland, because obviously, the Netherlands?
The result very close. So the guy who won had 50-point-something%, and the guy who lost had 49-point-something%. So it's not a sweeping victory, and I'm not actually clear what power the president has vis-a-vis the prime minister, who actually is the boss. I'm confused by that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the prime minister who's the.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah,
but I'm not sure if the president has the authority to actually oust the prime minister. I don't think he does. It's the whole bits and pieces. But
that would be a strange constitution if that were written.
But it's interesting that they've gone that you would think Poland would be looking towards sort of traditionally sort of NATO or whatever, or looking for presumably pro-European because they have had experience in both fascists and communists coming over their borders on a regular basis.
They've got borders in the east and the west. They don't want to reinvent or.
952-78-4000. Tim, you're looking pensive. Are you thinking about the chicken sandwich that you lost, or what's the situation?
It was a tragic, but no. I think if you look at Poland, I mean, the older citizens of Poland would have had compulsory teaching of Russian as a language, or as a second language, I suppose. And before the wall came down, as it were, all of these Romania, Yugoslavia. I was in Yugoslavia when it all began to implode, and the former Yugoslavia, and they have seen it all before. the sort of nationalism that sort of maybe being reborn is to do with immigration. And sad to say, I mean, you could take two views. You could either say, well, yes, we should all one world, one God, one world, and so on, and we should work towards a more unified way of thinking. But that, as I've often said, it's a cultural subtraction that people object to. In the UK, we have an issue with those people of Islam. In the USA, they've got a problem with South American and Central American immigrants coming in, and they've got a sort of economic issue with that. In Germany, they have a similarly difficult issue with those of different religions and so on. There are different forms of migration, but the general trend is to take a view that one should protect one's own nationhood or the culture of one's nation and so on. Is it healthy? Probably not. But nevertheless, that's what people will tend to vote on, one way or the other.
I think the problem here is looking too closely at the problem. Immigration has always happened. Immigration is part of being human. The problem is today the world has got much smaller. It's much easier to travel across border. I mean, there was no such thing as passports 100 years ago. People just came and went as if pleased. But now the world's much smaller. And areas of conflict or poverty, etc., if you're growing up there, you will look to go to a better country, won't you? People do that. I mean, that's why Europeans went to North America for various reasons, for economy, for religious reasons, etc. And the trick here is not to try to stop it, it's try to manage that change, accept that it's a reality, and it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse as climate change, etc. happens. Some countries will be unlivable. Well, you can't just make them stay there and die. They have to be able to go somewhere else, and we have to manage that as a whole group of countries around globally. And I don't see any real effort to make that sort of thinking happen.
The other thing, of course, is the imagery. So, for example, over the weekend, 1,200 migrants come across on small boats. Now we know that's not it's 0. Whatever it is of the immigration thing, but it makes great social media imaging, doesn't it? You can say, and they too have. How dare they have mobile phones? How dare they have new trainers and we want our refugees to be in rags pushing carts, a la coming out of Germany in 1945, and so that's that can be another polarizing image. And if you see that, you're going to go, well, these people should be. They go to the Katie Hopkins solution, basically, where she said she would quite happily sort of have gunboats in the, in the channel. And whatever happened to Border Force? That was set up, wasn't that? I mean, so that is perhaps one of the reasons. Just quickly, back to Poland. Thank you, Richard. The President has the right to dissolve both chambers of Parliament in certain cases determined by the Constitution. He can veto legislation, represents the Republic on the international stage, and is the Commander-in-Chief of the nation's armed forces. Okay. So there you go. So
he's a big boy then.
So yes, exactly. It's not just a ceremonial sort of ceremonial role with
Medvedev and
exactly.
Putin. Yeah.
So that is that situation there. 952 78 4000. Going to take a quick ad break and then back with more Viewpoint.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
Always lively, joined in the studio by Dr. Jerry Hagan and Tim Stafford. 952 78 4000. Now, a couple of days ago, there were the London Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, by the way. He spoke about the possession. He was backing a report call for a reform on the law with cannabis, saying that this report said that the possession of small quantities of cannabis for personal use should be decriminalised. A report by the London Drugs Commission chaired by Lord Faulkner, made 42 recommendations, including removing natural cannabis from the Misuse of Drugs Act. Lord Faulkner told BBC Radio 4's Today programme that continuing to have possession as a crime meant continuing to have problems between the police and ethnic communities. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner said the report's recommendations were not the government position. They weren't going to be changing the policy. He said, Faulkner said the law doesn't work, is disproportionate and is used to relieve genuine symptoms of certain illnesses. He said stop and search in London, for example, is most commonly based on the smell of cannabis and is disproportionately used against young black men. Sir Sadiq Khan said current rules could not be justified, adding that the Commission's finding had provided a compelling evidence-based case for decriminalisation. However, David Rains of the National Prevention of Drugs Alliance said that any reduction in the legal consequences around cannabis would send the message that cannabis was less harmful. The report made recommendations in covering education, healthcare and the policing of cannabis. Among the recommendations says natural cannabis should be removed from the Misuse of Drugs Act, where it's considered a Class B alongside drugs such as ketamine, and instead maintain it as a controlled substance. So the maximum term is 5 years, by the way, for possession of cannabis. So in the UK. So panel, it's one that goes back and forth, isn't it? About Sir Sadiq Khan seems to be saying that they should be decriminalising cannabis. Jerry, as you know, as the medical man amongst us, over to you first.
I think, to be fair, it was the Commission that said that should happen, and Sadiq Khan's agreeing with them. Cannabis is universally used in Europe, Western Europe, and in USA. It has been for generations now, and much longer than other parts of the world. There's probably some evidence that cannabis in teenagers is not good for the developing brain, but after that, the medical problems with cannabis are minimal, and especially compared to alcohol or other things that are permitted. Also sympathetic to the view that stop and search in London, if you're a policeman and you want to harass some black guys, you just have to say, I can smell cannabis, now I can search you. And I think that's what Sadiq Khan is talking about there. That's a practical police law enforcement issue, and is just alienating young black men who obviously some of them are wrong ones, but others have done nothing wrong and yet it's still been stopped.
Having said that, you're more likely to find a bunch of well-educated sort of white schoolboys as well having a
but they're less likely to get stopped. Yeah. The stats are quite overwhelming. The proportionate stoppage of a young black man is far higher than a young white man.
Well, yes, I think if they started crushing grapes now and making alcohol, that would be a Class A drug. Look at this sort of the grape remover, I call it, but the social implications of alcohol consumption and the deaths on the road, the violence and outside clubs, the family disintegration that happens alongside alcoholism or the abuse of alcohol. It is the default. Alcohol is the default drug. I think I can call it that, really. That what citizens might use to take their worries and cares and worries away. That's at its lightest. At its worst, alcohol is a very sinister drug indeed. Cannabis has never really, as far as I'm aware, been the drug which leads to any sort of disintegration, violence, or anything else of that kind. The only thing I can really think of that is in a way of a negative, if somebody really is using cannabis to an extreme, really caning it to use.
Caning it, Tim?
Caning it, yes. that there might be some sort of psychosis resultant from, especially the particularly strong drug versions of cannabis that there are today, the skunk sort of area.
We're talking about natural cannabis.
But I think there's a very good body of proof, which Jerry will enlighten us on, that in some medical conditions used therapeutically, I suppose, or medically, medicinally, that, in Parkinson's and so on, that it does have some very meretricious results. It's a natural substance.
It's been used as a medicine for centuries, if not millennia. It was only in the 1920s type era, the era of prohibition, all that sort of thing, they decided to make cannabis illegal because it made people feel good. But one historical fact about you said doesn't do anything. The word hashish led to the phrase assassin, because was it the Berbers?
No, it's the
Middle East.
The northeastern Syrians.
Okay, they used to take it before they went into battle because it would kill more people that way. But they're probably more relaxed and less fearful of dying. I don't know why, but historically, assassin comes from the word hashish.
So there's something.
And bags of Cheetos and possibly Mars. The sales of Mars bars might go up as a consequence of legalizing of not the medicinal, but of cannabis from street.
I would think it would probably be sort of cookies more than that.
And cookies. The cookies will go
themselves. Yes. But I mean, that's the indeed. But no, obviously the problem is here is that. As several sort of commentators have said, the problem is that when you introduce drugs into a society, this has been seen as a gateway drugs. It encourages criminality. So you would have to be extremely careful in the way that you would sort of govern such a thing. Do you see yourself nipping down to the corner shop for a packet of Morocco's finest, as it were?
But the alternative is you go to get it from a dealer who also deals in other things and encourages you to try something else, but which the corner shop guy wouldn't do. But jumping back to the original point, there's commission after commission over the decades saying we should decriminalise. You can't say legalise because decriminalise, make them not illegal, and it's always ignored because the politicians just don't have the courage to go along with it, or maybe the Greens might and some Lib Dems might, but most politicians shy away from it, like don't touch that with a barge pole, don't go anywhere near that.
And yet, I mean, again, we go back to the whole thing about socially acceptable drugs, and as we know, alcohol is a huge, and tobacco, and they've been demonized and cause huge damage. And you think if you're looking at a way of raising revenue, then perhaps the introduction of taxes on natural cannabis is, I'm not saying you should have a cannabis sponsored nuclear submarine, but it's worth a shot, isn't it, Tim?
Well, yeah, obviously race cars, if you put sort of they'd be driving very slowly if the drivers were stoned.
The ghost of James Hunt.
But that. No, I think the total legitimization of cannabis would obviously require that those who are cultivating the drug and marketing the drug are taxed in the same way as anybody else gaining income from a crop.
That's why prohibition ended, because the government needed a tax from alcohol in the US. They were short of money, and so alcohol was allowed again, and they raised a huge amount of tax. So you've got a point.
Amongst the recommendations this report made was to improve public health services for cannabis-related harm, including better treatment access and coordination, to enhance cannabis education with earlier, age-appropriate and credible content in schools and beyond. That's a big ask. Support fair access to medical cannabis, including addressing cost barriers and expanding research and monitoring international developments to reassess the case for broader legislation in 5 years. So, obviously, they are looking at the worry maybe would be to see that, people are saying that cannabis is not harmful, and there are some cases there it is, but of course that is when it generally tends to be grown artificially and in these super strong. I mean, I've friends have got sons who've had personal problems with this sort of thing because they've been ingesting this sort of.
As I said, the teenage brain is much more sensitive to that than to a fully developed brain. But look at Spain; you're allowed to grow up to 6 cannabis plants in your own house, garden, whatever.
How big are they supposed to be, though?
I don't know. But they haven't. The Spanish society hasn't collapsed because of it, and we don't have police stopping the search of people by saying I can smell cannabis. This doesn't happen. So there is a point. Well, why does that happen in London or other big cities in the UK? Is it necessary? Is it wasting police time? Is it making alienating a minority group because they're overly investigated, put it politely.
Interesting enough, Germany actually brought in legislation on the 1st of April, believe it or not, decriminalising it. And their rules were over 18s can possess up to 25 grams of cannabis in public. Adults can grow three plants a household. But people aren't allowed to smoke within sight of schools, sports centres, or in pedestrian zones between 7 in the morning and 8 o'clock. And also
8 o'clock at night or 7 in the morning.
7 o'clock to 8 in the night.
I thought you meant for an hour.
And from next month, growers' associations or social clubs, and this has been. These are the sort of things that keep being closed down in Spain all the time, can be established with up to 500 members. Members must be over 18 and live in Germany because they're trying to stop the tourism that you see going to Amsterdam. The clubs can grow and distribute the drug on a strictly not-for-profit basis, and you can't consume the drug in the social club itself. So that's an interesting one, and they want to set up gardening clubs as well. It's it is a. Some people have said, however, that it would start a chaos phase with people just taking the demand would outstrip the legal supply. So we'll see how that goes with Germany.
They've already done it in Portugal and Holland, various US states, Canada. I can't remember. And their societies didn't collapse.
I think alcohol. If one goes into a bar and orders a sort of half pint of lager. It's not a gateway to the top shelf. It's just somebody having a half pint of lager. It doesn't work like that. It's so common in society that drinking to greater or lesser extents applies. But as it stands in many countries, if a dealer has to be phoned to obtain your cannabis, the likelihood is that he could be asked the question, and quite frequently is asked the question, do you have any X, Y, Z? And that would be eliminated by the legalization of cannabis, which would be another good thing. Because if you're a dealer in one illegal substance, you might as well be a dealer in every other.
Would you like to try this? Yeah. And another viewpoint from my point of view is, over the decades of watching football, etc., football violence at football matches diminished hugely around the time when youngsters started taking cannabis or ecstasy before they went to match, instead of getting tanked up on alcohol beforehand.
If you read your Owen Welsh books, that's in the I think it's Malibu Salt Night, or whatever it's called. 952-78-4000. If you want to get involved, with the show, then these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
The Polish Parliament Speaker Holowina says, I propose that confidence vote in the government takes place next week. Back to the subject we're talking about, should cannabis be decriminalised in the UK after, Sir Sadiq Khan's London Mayor's comments last week. The UK really needs to stop pretending it's fighting the war on drugs, legalise it and make income from it, and a chunk of crime disappears overnight. Meretricious, is that apparently attractive but having no real value definition, or relating to or characteristic of a prostitute definition, Tim? Okay. You can get weed on mail order, Giles. Thank you. Order it online, have it delivered in a vacuum-packed jiffy bag. No need to go to the corner shop, apparently. Thank you for that. Yes, I will leave that one there. 952 78 4000 being the phone number if you want to get involved with this or anything else. Crossing your radar. Would love to hear from you on this Viewpoint. It is Tuesday, the 3rd of June. Get a quick break and then back with more Viewpoint.
Viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe with Giles Brown.
And it's live to the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your Viewpoint, please?
Good morning, Giles. It's Alf.
Morning, Alf.
From sunny Benalmadena. I presume that the whole of the Costa del Sol is sunny, to be honest.
This is getting
really strange again, and this is heading for drought time.
Right.
I was just wondering, I don't want to go back over what was discussed before, but I suppose I do. It was about the position that the Labour Party have taken over the defence issue.
Yeah.
This discussion has been rumbling on for almost ever since Ukraine started. We should be putting more money, and then Trump comes along, and all Trump's done is put the focus on the real issue. The real issue is you've got to put more money in, and the complication I've got with the way that this defence review thing has gone on. And I think the media, for once, are quite right to keep saying, but you haven't said you're going to commit the money. You've just said, this is what we think we're going to do. And there's no real commitment to say, we are going to do this and it will happen, and this is what's going to go in the budget, and this is what's going to happen next year, all that. It's all futuristic stuff. And I think, and I don't like this at all, I think what they're doing is they're floating a view to the public in general and other political parties, and they're then going to sit back and watch the conversations that go on, like on your programme, like we do all the time, conversations that go on where they're going to try to pick out where's the path, where is the path through this? Do people want to spend? And I heard what Tim said. Tim, congratulations, you're wonderful about how you can rubbish a Labour government simply by saying what you said. I just find it amazing that you know so much about the Labour Party and what they do. It's incredible. And you know I love you to death, and what you say makes a lot of sense, but sometimes your political views are a bit strange. Oh, and morning to Jerry as well. It's just...
Morning, Alf.
I just find this weird, because I genuinely don't believe that they've got a view, and it will be about saying to people, do you want to spend more on education, or should we put a bit more in defence? Do you want to spend a bit more? They say they've ring-fenced the NHS, but even that is subject to a whole pile of discussions about have they really ring-fenced the NHS against future rises? I don't think they have. I think they've just said we're not going to make any cuts in the NHS. I don't think they've actually indicated that they're going to put more money into the NHS, other than what they've just done short term in order to get it out of the mess. I think they're looking at the NHS as one of those areas, a bit like the civil service, where technology has been left to go into decline, really, and it's called, do you invest in the people, do you invest in a nurse, or do you invest in a piece of technology? And how does, the nurse isn't going to change things, they're just going to do the job that they've always done, but technology could change the way a future nurse does their job. So I think what they're doing is, for this defence review, is I think they're floating kites and seeing what stays up and what comes down. And I think they've generated an argument that actually nobody's got an answer to, because everybody will say, let's defend our country. What's the classic is, we are, the UK is the nuclear defence of Europe. And you go, okay, so why are we also the aircraft carrier for Europe? Why are we the land army for Europe? How many more things are we going to be for Europe when we don't allow Europe to do things? And one of the comments was about having a European army, and the opposition to having a European army that's always existed is that sovereign countries lose control of their armed forces. Other people make decisions where money's spent, where troops are put, who we defend, where we go to. And Britain, remember, still has this massive, it's not an empire, but it's a massive connection to what was the old empire, where we do send aid and help, and it's not overseas aid, it's military aid and all that. They do go to, Falklands, for example. Who the hell, other than the sheep that lives there, nobody else really gives a damn whose it is, so long as nobody gets hurt. So I just think they're floating kites, which I don't agree with. I think they should have been big and bold, made positive decisions, positive milestones, and then let people tick them off as they go past them.
Interesting indeed. Panel, any thoughts on what I've got to say on that one?
Yes, watch Ralph.
Oh, yeah.
Hope you're well. And, yes, I think you're quite right about, flying kites and seeing what their response might be. I think that's what they are doing. And there's a case, we've got a Minister for Defence and a Minister of State for Procurement. And when they use the word review, as you all very well know, that's pretty much a recipe for a long build-up to this 3% that has been mooted and probably will be achieved at some point. And at what cost? Yes, I couldn't... I mean, what else has to suffer in the way of getting to that 3%? It's a very difficult question, but it always has been a very difficult question. I think you'll agree. And
but we did bite the bullet, didn't we? We bit the bullet over nuclear submarines and keeping nuclear submarines and keeping the nuclear deterrent. Yeah. We made a big decision back in the 60s and 70s, and again in the 80s, and again in the 90s. All the time we're renewing our commitment to nuclear. But it's the first time I've ever heard it said as we are the nuclear defence for Europe.
Well, the French and ourselves are the possessors of nuclear weapons, and
no, well, evidently not now. Britain is the only nuclear holding country in Europe.
What about the French? Are they not?
No, I don't think they've got any more. They got rid of it. A lot of them have got rid of them when they had that big issue about let's denuclearise everything, let's get rid of nuclear weapons in the world and all of that. And of course, things were set up in order to have conversations about it. Yeah. But I think what happened is that slowly and surely, it's not that the French... They probably still have some sort of
according to the Arms Control Association, they have nuclear weapons. So
yes, but they're not got something like Trident.
No, I think we've got about something like 160 warheads.
They have 290 nuclear warheads, most of which are designed for delivery by submarine-launched ballistic missiles.
Yeah, and where's their nuclear submarines then? Because I've never heard of a nuclear submarine based for France. But let's assume that they have.
It's top secret.
Oh yeah, just like the British one is. The place in Scotland, I think it is, isn't it? Oh yeah, let's be surprised that it doesn't exist. It's secret. I don't know, but it was the first time I've heard that phrase that Britain is at the forefront of the lead.
Who said that?
That was Starmer yesterday, the NATO general, and all of the media stuff that's gone on with it is about Britain being the nuclear position defending Europe. And I thought, wow, I thought there were other people like the French. I also thought that maybe the Spanish would have some level of nuclear, but not in terms of that. It would be nowadays. You're talking about shells that they fire out of cannons.
Yeah, no, the Spanish haven't. Only in Fuengirola do they have some serious
weaponry. No, but I mean, obviously you've got the American bases. Obviously, we had that run in the 60s where we got a couple of bombs which were dropped by mistake, etc. And Flagger went in the sea as well.
That was Cliff Richard, wasn't it, or was it Morecambe and Wise?
Yes, indeed. Now we really are going down a cult tunnel. Al, thanks.
Nice to talk to you all, boys.
All right, Al, thank you very much for your call in there.
See you, Al.
952 78 4000. You see, we go everywhere with this one from France's nuclear. They do have a nuclear port, by the way. It's Elong, apparently. Stephen Ritson can probably pronounce that much better than I do, but. So, therefore, the main nuclear submarine base is in Elong, located in Brest Arbor in Brittany, home to the French Navy's 4 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines. Each submarine carries 16 nuclear missiles. That's... interesting. Sam's coming from Ibiza. Very insightful on the drugs, boys. Sounds like you've got a lot of experience. How dare you, sir? Throwing nasturtiums on our foul slur, indeed.
I've got a lot of friends.
You've got a lot of friends. Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, if you want to get involved with this morning's Viewpoint, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Viewpoint.
The truth is that the UK, particularly the small set of islands that we are, has been under a great deal of pressure in terms of numbers.
Live, lively, and often controversial.
Presented by Giles Brown.
EU is the best market for the UK, so we have to have some form of rapprochement. But as Trump famously said to Zelensky, we don't have many cards to play. We really don't.
Join me, Giles Brown, from 10 o'clock every Tuesday and get your viewpoint across.
And the more we foster wars, the more immigration we will have, because why do people move? Because they don't feel safe where they are.
Viewpoint is brought to you by St. James Global Private Clients, protecting your assets and growing your wealth. stjamesglobal.com.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Right then, Triomphant submarines and air capability, nuclear-wise. Trident is only sub-based. Right, let's go into the last 9 minutes of this morning's Viewpoint. I want to throw it over to another question, because this survey is just coming through that a supply of short-term rentals for tourists has jumped 25% in Spain over the past 2 years. That's by a study by tourism lobby group Exceltur, found despite the local government's attempts to curtail them amid a housing crisis. But to the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
It's Charles from Mallorca.
Morning, Charles.
And going back to the marijuana debate.
Yes.
I have 3 things to add. The most important one, and I think one of your guests alluded to this, is that the effect of cannabis or overuse of cannabis by young minds, teenagers, can be very bad. I have 2 experiences, a nephew and a friend's son, who are both schizophrenic over the use of marijuana. In the case of my nephew, he will never hold a job down in his life, and He's a perfectly pleasant person. He doesn't dare drink or smoke cannabis or anything anymore because he just doesn't dare. And in the case of the friend's son, he does, and he is totally unruly and unable to be social at all. Now, moving on from that, a couple of amusing stories. One, on a trot around our valley, we passed by a friend's house, invited us in for a drink, and then after about an hour, said, I've got to get on. I've got to plant my crop. He had quite a sizable vegetable garden of Dutch vegetables. And my wife's a very keen gardener. She said, no, that stuff it's weed, literally as well. It just needs sun, soil, and a bit of water. So he gave us 6 seeds, which she planted just inside our fence, which is out of view of the main road. You can't drive by it. One day we had a car accident, and a few months later, police came up to get a statement from me, which means they came into our driveway and came to our fence. Next morning, there are no plants in the garden. Well, there are lots of plants, but not those plants.
Right.
I go down to the police station. He leaves a note, contact policeman number 13 of the Andratch office. I go down there, and I do the drawing because it was about the accident. You know, she was here and I was here, and it went bang and so on. And as I was about to get up, he said, one more thing, Senor Whitehead. ¿Sabes qué es una planta restringida? Oh,
Shiza. Oh, yeah, indeed, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, so it was you that took them. Right, okay. Yeah, okay. I know what you're talking about. He said, well, and he made here the sign of a pair of handcuffs on.
Okay.
He said, no es una falta, es un delito. It's not a mistake, it's a crime. I'm thinking, oh, shit, I'm worried about... sorry.
Quite all right. I've been called worse, don't worry about that, man.
10 minutes late for work, not 10 months. So he gives me a very thorough verbal rap over the knuckles.
Right.
And says, well, I can see you're not a drug baron, which is absolutely true. We don't smoke at all. This was purely... And I made the silly mistake of saying, well, it's just a friend gave us those as an experiment.
Ooh.
He didn't ask the obvious question.
Yes,
he didn't ask it.
Yes. What the snitches get, my friend.
And no, we just growing on as an experiment, because my wife is a very keen gardener. Anyway, he then says, oh, okay, fair enough, we won't do anything. And I'm halfway through the door, hands on the jamb of the door, and Senor Whitehead, one more thing. What? He said, if you do any more experiments, put them somewhere a bit more hidden, will you?
Genius.
I reckon he didn't move anything forward because that way they could keep them and smoke them.
And I'd just like to say that those views are obviously not the views of TRE or anything to do with this. Thank you very much.
They're my views. They're my views. Don't stick by them.
And pure speculation. Well, thank you for that one. Always good. And yes.
Well, I've got one other.
Come on then, as it's almost Christmas.
Big Easter party that used to happen every year. One of our neighbours and the daughter or one of her friends brought along 2 chocolate cakes.
Yes.
One of which had been laced.
Yes.
My wife saw these 2 chocolate cakes on the table, thought, if we just leave them, they're going to get in an absolute mess. So she cuts them all up into nice little squares.
Yes.
And after a bit, one of the girls came along and said, where's the chocolate cake? So my missus says, well, I sliced them up and put them on the plate there. Oh, crikey. That party, I got really drunk on 2 beers. The chocolate cake was really nice, though.
Yes, indeed. Right. So, yes, there's a warning in that something. Well, thank you for those stories, and thank you for your thoughts on the debate and for your call in.
Okay. Nice to speak again. Bye.
And be careful with the chocolate brownies in future. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. Last caller was correct as some teenagers with whom I worked years ago had reactions after literally one joint and have never been mentally stable since. Breakdowns, manic depression, unable to work and almost suicidal. Extremely worrying and frightening to witness. Damage for life. Jerry?
The actual 18 is probably too young for cannabis. I probably shouldn't start using cannabis to early 20s. The reason is that a lot of people have the ability or susceptibility to get schizophrenia, but almost most of them don't. The trouble is cannabis in a young, growing teenage mind can slip you over that barrier and get into the schizophrenic state. So, I mean, that's theoretical. It's very hard to prove, but that's the current thinking.
Indeed. Tim, you're going to say something there?
Yes, schizophrenia being one part of mental illness that could be triggered, as Jerry was saying, but and that's always been the case. In my day, when I was a young gun, cannabis didn't have anywhere near the potency of, well, there's much THC in it as the modern skunk version does. Is it better? So somebody mentioned prostitution earlier. Is it better to have this thing totally sort of, I say legalised, policed, if you like, the whole thing being transparent rather like as prostitution? Prostitutes would be safer should everything be above board. And I think cannabis use is the same. I think you could even sort of educate those, well, it never works, but those youthful types that there is a danger of mental illness being triggered and so on.
Some of the comments coming in just quickly on there. Some comments saying, somebody died after taking paracetamol. Should we ban its sale and usage? Right then, I think we're almost out of time. It has once again been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you for all your calls in with the Viewpoint. Obviously, we will be discussing this and other issues, I'm sure, in the future as the debate rambles on and on. Of course, lots of great stuff coming up on Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain, throughout the day today, including Howard Brereton at 6 o'clock. Then we have Hannah preceding that at 4 o'clock. Preceding Hannah is Selena at 2 o'clock, and following me is Stephen Ritson, of course, at 12 o'clock. This show is going to be repeated at 7. My thanks to my guests today, Dr. Jerry Hagan.
Thank you. Hope you had a good day.
Indeed, and of course, thankfully, the man who goes maximum attack when any ants are anywhere near his kitchen, Tim Stafford.
Yes, I hope I don't get invaded by sort of an army of cockroaches.
Well, Dad, I'm going to be very careful next time you offer me a chicken sandwich. I think that's the main thing. Yes, keep that to yourself. Keep that story to yourself. Thank you for all your comments in. I will see you tomorrow for Let's Talk, and Stephen Ritson is up next.
Views expressed on Viewpoint by invited studio guests and callers do not constitute an opinion endorsed in any way by Talk Radio Europe.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this program, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit TRE.radio.